I noticed it last Sunday. He was standing at my kitchen sink, washing up after lunch, and his back was to me, and his sleeves were rolled to the elbow the way his father always rolled them. Not neatly, just pushed up, practical. And his hands were moving under the water, and I had to look away. Not because it was painful, because it was so complete, so exact. 53 years ago, those same hands belonged to a man I married, and now they are my son's hands, and my son is 54 years old and doesn't know what he carries in them. My name is Vivian, Vivian Marsh. I'm 88 years old, and I have been a mother for 54 years, and I think I am only in these last quiet years, beginning to understand what that has meant. What I gave my son, what his father gave him, what we gave him together without knowing we were giving it, and what we gave him that we didn't intend to give him at all. My husband's name was Robert Marsh, Bob to everyone except me. I always called him Robert. He said it sounded more serious when I said it, and he liked that. He liked that I took him seriously, even when he wasn't being serious at all. We married in 1963. I was 27. He was 31, and already certain about everything in a way I found either very attractive or very exhausting, depending on the day. He died in 2001, a Saturday in October, heart attack, fast. I have been a widow for 23 years now, longer than some marriages last. Our son's name is Thomas Robert Marsh, named for both grandfathers, as was the tradition in Robert's family, a tradition Robert felt strongly about and I felt neutral about, and so we did it. Thomas was born in 1970. He was a serious baby. I know that sounds strange to say about an infant, but he was. He watched things. He watched faces. He had Robert's stillness, even at 3 months old, that quality of a person who is taking everything in before deciding what to do with it. He grew into a serious man, a good man. I want to say that clearly, a genuinely good man, in a way that has nothing to do with me saying it because I'm his mother. He is patient and reliable, and the kind of person who shows up without being asked when something needs doing. He got that from Robert. Robert was the same way. But there are other things he got from Robert, things that are harder to name, things I've been thinking about since last Sunday at the kitchen sink. Robert was not an easy man to know. I want to be careful here, because he is gone, and I loved him, and Thomas loved him, and the dead can't speak for themselves. But I would not be honest if I didn't say that Robert kept a great deal of himself behind a door that was very rarely open. He was present, he was responsible, he worked hard, and came home every night and sat at the dinner table and asked Thomas about his day in a way that showed he was genuinely interested. He coached Thomas's baseball team for 3 years when Thomas was in middle school. He was there. But there was an interior life in Robert that I was only occasionally admitted to, a room in him that I glimpsed sometimes, late at night, or during a long drive, or once, memorably during a power cut, when we sat in the dark for 2 hours and talked in a way we almost never talked in the light. And then the door would close again, and Robert would be Robert again, solid, present, sealed. I accepted that about him. Maybe I accepted it too readily. Thomas is the same way. His wife, her name is Karen, they've been married 26 years. Karen said to me once, about 5 years ago, said it gently over coffee, the way women sometimes say things to their mothers-in-law that they can't say directly to their husbands. "Vivian, does Thomas ever talk to you?
Really talk. I knew exactly what she meant. I said, "He's like his father." She nodded. She looked out the window. We didn't say anything else about it, but I've carried that conversation, the look on her face when she nodded. Not resigned exactly, something more patient than resigned. The look of a woman who has been sitting outside a closed door for 26 years and has decided to stay anyway. I knew that look. I had worn that look. I think about when Thomas was small, before the stillness fully settled in him, before he learned the way children learn to reflect back what they saw. He was 6 or 7, and he used to crawl into our bed on Saturday mornings. He would get between Robert and me, and he would talk, just talk, about his dreams, about something he'd seen at school, about a question he'd had in the night that couldn't wait. He was full of language then, full of the unedited overflow of a child's mind. Robert would listen, quietly, patiently, not saying much. I would ask questions, pull more out, and Thomas would talk until he ran out, and then he'd lie between us and be quiet and satisfied in the way that children are satisfied when they feel received. I think about that boy sometimes. I wonder when the door started to close. I don't blame Robert for it. I'm not sure blame is the right frame for what I'm trying to say. I don't think Robert chose his interior seal. I think he inherited it from his own father, who was a man of even fewer words and a quietness that bordered on absence. And his father probably inherited it from his father before that. A long line of men who kept their interior rooms locked and called it strength or privacy, or simply never thought to call it anything at all, because the door had always been closed and they didn't know there was another way. And Robert passed it to Thomas, not cruelly, not deliberately, just the way fathers pass things to sons, by being the first man a boy watches, by being the model before the boy knows he's studying it. Thomas is a good father. His children, he has 2, a son named Michael who is 24, and a daughter named Lily who is 21. They love him the way children love a parent who is steady, who is always there, who never frightens them and never disappears. Michael is easy with Thomas. They share a language around certain things, sports, practical problems, things that can be fixed or solved. They're comfortable together in that mode. But I've watched Lily with him. Lily is bright and emotional and full of language, like Thomas was at 6 and 7, before the door closed. She says things directly. She asks questions that go straight to the center of something. She has Karen's openness, and it sits, sometimes, a little uncomfortably alongside Thomas's habit of receiving without returning. She loves him completely, and I think she sometimes stands outside his door, the same way Karen does, the same way I stood outside Robert's. 3 generations of women standing in the same hallway. Robert and I had one conversation, one complete, open, unguarded conversation that I have thought about for 23 years. It was 1997. Thomas was 27, living in another city by then. It was a winter evening, no particular occasion, and Robert and I were sitting in the living room after dinner. The television was off. Neither of us was reading. And Robert said, out of complete silence, "I think Thomas is lonelier than he lets on." I looked at him. I said, "I think so too." And Robert said, "I don't know how to help him with that." He said it quietly, plainly, without self-pity or drama, just a man stating a true thing about himself and his son in the same sentence. I didn't say what I was thinking, which was, "Robert, I think you gave it to him," not meanly, just the truth of it. I said, "Maybe just let him know you see it." Robert nodded. I don't know if he ever did. He died 4 years later, and that conversation has sat in me ever since, as the moment we came closest to saying the real thing, and turned slightly aside from it at the last moment. After Robert died, Thomas changed, not dramatically, not in ways that would be visible to someone who didn't know him, but I knew him. I watched him in the months after Robert's death, the way you watch someone walking on uncertain ground. He was efficient about the practicalities. He handled things. He flew out. He made arrangements. He sat with me. He was there in all the ways he knew how to be there. But I watched him with the grief itself, watched him keep it managed, handled, behind the door. I remember sitting with him one evening, about 2 weeks after the funeral. He was on the couch, and I was in the chair, and I asked him gently, carefully, how he was doing, not with the logistics.
"With it," he said. "I'm okay, Mom." I said, "You don't have to be okay." He looked at me for a moment. Something moved across his face. I saw it. And then he said, "I know, I'm okay though." And I didn't push. I should have pushed. Or maybe pushing was never the right word. Maybe the right word was stayed with him in the uncertainty. Didn't accept the door closing quite so quickly. But I was grieving too, and it's hard to hold space for someone else's sealed interior when your own grief is taking up most of the room. I'm 88. I've been thinking, as 88-year-olds perhaps tend to do, about what I leave behind. Not possessions, not the house or the furniture or the particular objects that accumulate over a life and have to be sorted through afterward. What I leave in people, in Thomas specifically. Because when I look at my son, when I watch him standing at my kitchen sink with his sleeves rolled up and his hands moving under the water, I see Robert. I see a good man. I see a man who shows up, who is reliable, who is loved. And I see the locked room. And I wonder, I have been wondering for the last week, since Sunday, since the kitchen sink, whether I did enough, whether I said enough, whether in 54 years of being Thomas's mother, I ever sat with him long enough, pushed gently enough, stayed in the hallway outside the closed door long enough to let him know that I saw it, that I knew it was there, that he didn't have to keep it locked on my account. Karen called me on Tuesday. We talk regularly. I like Karen. I have always liked Karen. She has the quality I was drawn to in her immediately. She says true things without cruelty, which is rarer than it sounds. She asked how I was feeling. My health has been uncertain this year. Nothing acute, just the accumulated uncertainty of being 88. And she asks carefully, the way people ask when they are genuinely paying attention. I told her I'd been thinking about Thomas. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "He talks about you, you know, more than he talks about most things." I didn't say anything. She said, "He worries about you. He just doesn't always know how to say it out loud." I said, "I know." And I did know. Knowing is not the same as having heard it, but I know. There is a photograph on my mantelpiece. It was taken in 1975. Thomas is 5 years old. He is sitting on Robert's lap, and they are both looking at something outside the frame, something to the left, something that made them both turn at the same moment, and their profiles are identical. The jaw, the set of the eyes, the slight tilt of the head. I took that photograph. I remember taking it. I remember thinking, look at that. They are the same person at different ages, sitting right there together. I had no idea then what I was actually looking at. Not just the physical likeness, the whole inheritance.
everything Robert was going to give Thomas without knowing he was giving it. The steadiness and the sealed interior, and the love that is constant, and the love that is sometimes hard to feel the temperature of because it runs so deep and so quiet. I was 39 years old, and I took a photograph of a father and son who didn't know yet what they were to each other, what they were already in the process of becoming to each other. I look at that photograph differently now. I have never told Thomas that he has his father's hands. I don't know why. It seems like such a simple thing to say, a gift even, to tell your child that they carry something of the person they lost. But I think I've been afraid of what comes after it. If I say, "Thomas, you have your father's hands," then he might ask what else he has of his father, and I'd have to decide how much of the real answer to give him. And I don't know, at 88, whether I have the right to open that conversation, whether it serves him now, at 54, to have his mother sit him down and talk about inherited silences and locked interior rooms. Maybe it does. Maybe I've been wrong to protect him from it. Or maybe, and this is the other possibility, the one I turn over on quiet nights, maybe he already knows. Maybe he has always known. Maybe the awareness has been there in him all along, the same way I think the awareness was in Robert, that quiet self-knowledge that never quite found its way into words. Maybe he is waiting for me to say it, the way I waited for Robert to say it. I called Thomas last Wednesday. No occasion. He answered on the second ring, which meant he was near his phone, which usually means he was thinking about me. We talked for 20 minutes. Ordinary things, the weather where he is, Michael's new job, Lily's apartment. And at the end, before we said goodbye, I said, I don't know what made me say it. It came out before I'd decided to say it. I said, Thomas, I love you. I want you to know that I see you. I see who you are. There was a pause, a long one. He said, I know, Mom. His voice was different when he said it, quieter than usual, the door for just a moment a little less closed. He said, I love you too. We hung up. I sat with the phone in my hands for a long time. I don't know how much time I have. 88 is old. I know it's old. My body knows it in ways my mind is still sometimes surprised by. The mornings take longer. The world feels both very far away and very close at the same time. I think about Robert. I think about what he would say if he could say anything about the man Thomas became. I think he would be proud in the way Robert was proud of things, quietly, deeply, without ceremony. He would probably say something dry and understated, and it would mean everything. I think he would also, if he were very honest, recognize in Thomas the thing he passed on without meaning to, the locked room, the sealed interior, and I think he would want, as I want, for Thomas to find the key, not to give the room away, just to be able to open it sometimes, to let Karen in, to let Michael and Lily in, to know that the room being open doesn't mean the room being lost. I want that for him. I should have said it more. I'm saying it now. My son has his father's hands. He has his father's stillness and his father's steadiness and his father's love that runs deep and quiet and is sometimes hard to feel the temperature of. He has his father's sealed interior, and he has, this I know, this I've seen, a part of himself that wants to open, that has always wanted to open, that opened for a moment on the phone last Wednesday when his voice went quiet and the door was a little less closed. I heard it. I've been listening for 54 years. I heard it. I'm going to call him again tomorrow. Not because something needs to be said, not to have a big conversation or fix anything. Just to say, I'm thinking of you. Just because he's my son, and I love him, and he has his father's hands, and I want him to know that I see him standing at the sink, and I see everything those hands carry, and I think it is beautiful, and I think it is a great deal to carry, and I want him to know I see both of those things at once. That's all. That is everything. If you have someone in your life who carries something heavy and sealed, someone who loves you in a way that's hard to feel the temperature of, maybe just let them know that you see them. Not to change anything, not to open what they're not ready to open. Just, I see you. Sometimes that's the only thing. If this stayed with you in some way, leave a comment. It doesn't have to be much. I'll be here.